So today is the summer solstice, and I figured what better way to spend it than to keep with the S theme, to go find some snails and sundews. So, what kind of crazy stuff are we going to see in the forest preserve today? Let's find out. Alright, so I haven't really made a video for, I don't know, the past month or two. Pretty much it's because I didn't really have anything to videotape. It's been a cold year. If you've seen that last video, it was snowing as late as April. So I figured, okay, once all the snow is done, things are going to start to warm up. Plants are going to start growing. But it turns out it's been pretty cold. Like low of 50 to 55, high of 65 during the day. Like the entire month of June, I've been wearing sweaters and long pants. So the Sarracenia, which are kind of the most important to me right now, or just the most interesting, if you've seen that big collection I've been expanding, their pictures aren't really looking the best. They've got like 1 or 2 new pictures on them, so I figured, there's nothing to videotape there. The other trees, they've leafed out, but then I just got busy with a bunch of stuff, so I hadn't, had any time to videotape that stuff. But today, had a day off. It's the summer solstice, so let's go look at some Sundews pitcher plants and Helix pomatia in the wild. Pretty much just going to be cruising around from site to site today, so let's see what we can find. And then I'll be back, sometime probably like July and August, once all those plants finally start getting their full growth, with some new carnivorous plant videos. Well, let's take a look what we can find out here. Alright, so here we are at the Pervert and Drosera rotundifolia site. There's also a lot of pink lady slipper orchids around here, and, a bunch of other interesting plants. So, we've been here before, when I made the Drosera rotundifolia video last year, so I came up to check it back out. I wanted to see these pink lady slipper orchids, and a lot of them were in bloom, so that was pretty cool. I think last season, I went a little bit later on in the summer, so everything had finished blooming, but now we have kind of a cool contrast between the dark maroon of the purpurias and the light pink of the orchids. And so I took a few photos of those. Really cool looking plants. Of course, my favorite things are the sundews, so I walked back kind of by this opening at the very end of this loop here, kind of, before we go onto the water. There is a little area that the Drosera rotundifolia like to grow in this, sphagnum moss, of course. I looked by the purpurea, and there were some of those paddles with their dew hairs sticking out. You can kind of barely see them. They're getting a little bit overgrown, but there are some nice clumps later on. So here's kind of a bigger group of them growing in the sphagnum moss. So I checked out this area. I was looking through all the sphagnum moss, but there wasn't a whole lot of them. There are some, like a decent amount, I guess, but not too many. So what I decided to do was to go back up kind of by that open water. Not only is it a really cool view, but I figured in some of the more flooded areas, there might be more sundews growing, but not really. They're all kind of restricted to the sphagnum moss, so there's the view of the larger body of water there, and I checked out this kind of, area right by the edge of the water for more sundews, but there weren't any. So I went back around, kept seeing all these pink lady slipper orchids, or as I like to call them, pink scrotum orchids, just because they have a very interesting shape to that flower right there. One of my favorite flowering plants, actually. So, I saw a few of them, then I circled back around to find some more of the, rotundifolias. And there was a really big one here. That one was maybe, 3 or maybe even 4 of my fingers long. Had a pretty good pad on the end there. And so there was a nice clump of them growing here. As you can see, there's a lot more of the sundews around this large one. And another interesting thing was that, I'm kind of floating, sitting balanced on this piece of wood here so I don't sink into the bog, and trying to get a good shot of it. Right by this young tree, there was a pretty healthy looking sundew just growing in this clump of detritus and lichen. So that was interesting. I figured that would maybe be too dry for it, but I guess not. So I started swatting all the mosquitoes off of me, and then I also swatted a fly off my leg, and I decided I'll probably feed it to that really big sundew to give it a nice meal before I go. Alright, so we've left the bog. I'm on my way home, so I stopped by this Helix pomatia site just because I don't think I've been here since last year. So let's take a look and see how they're all doing. Alright, so here is the entrance out of the parking lot, and I walk up to this tree, and there's already 2 Helix pomatia here on the side. They're about mid-age, so they're not full grown yet, but they had nice shells on them. And there were, a good number of these snails around. Not as much as previous years because it was a little bit dry. And I didn't really find any young ones. I just found kind of medium-aged Helix pomatia here and there. There was an empty shell. So it wasn't really, the most snails I've ever seen in this site, but since I was already at that bog and it was on my way home, I figured I'll walk around here and check it out, see if there's anything cool. There weren't too many snails, but coming up I had a little bit of an interesting interaction with this young gentleman. So here we have 2 more good-looking Helix pomatia. Alright, so about halfway through my snail trip, I walked maybe like 25 feet off of the main path, and I'm just in the grasses and low-growing shrubs looking for these snails. And I see this guy who I originally thought was an Indian, and because I didn't get a good look at his face, and he's got his pants and his underwear taken off. They're hanging in that tree over there, and he was on a blanket, kind of, hunched over, stretching out his genitals, so I figured, okay, maybe he's doing some weird sex yoga or something in the woods. So I kept looking for snails for maybe like a minute or 2, and then I saw him stand up, and he starts kind of walking back and forth, staring at me. So I figured, all right, this is getting kind of weird. I think I'm just going to dip out of here really quick. So I headed back to the main trail and walking away. And then I hear psst, psst, coming from the bushes where he was in. So I walk back over and I come up to him and I say, yo, what's going on, dude? Are you feeling all right? And he just immediately said, hey, bro, can you stick your cock in my mouth? And I said, well, I'm not gay, so I'm not going to be doing that. And he's like, okay, well, can you at least watch me finish? And I said, no, I'm not, going to be doing any kind of homosexual stuff in this forest preserve here. I don't know what you're planning on doing, but I'm not going to be taking part in it. I'm not going to call anyone because I didn't want him to get scared and run off. So I said, I'm just not going to be, doing whatever it is that you're doing here. So he's like, all right, I appreciate it, bro. So I walk back to the parking lot and I'm like, man, there's women and children around. There's soccer fields. It's a relatively public forest preserve. So I'm like, well, there's a naked pervert here jerking it off. So I should probably call somebody. So I call the police department. I'm like, well, we've got this situation over here. Do you want to come check it out? And they're like, yeah, we'll send some people over. So then 3 of the squad cars came up and I took them back to where this was happening. But about 15 minutes had passed, so he already packed up his stuff and left. So we ended up not finding him, but that's probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Alright, so no naked black man today. I ended up walking around with law enforcement, and I figured, normally I wouldn't call anybody, but I figured this is a situation where I probably should if there's kids around and he's asking people to come over and engage in naked activities with him. Hey, maybe we'll find him next time, but hindsight is 2020. I probably should have stuck around. Originally I thought there might be some district employees at one of the buildings, but they were all empty, so some time passed before I actually called the police and they got here. So shoot, couldn't find him. We walked around for an hour, but it's a big forest preserve. If he's hiding somewhere down by the river in one of the nooks, I don't know, we just couldn't find him. So I figured I'd be the one running around naked in the forest for the summer solstice as a pagan, but I guess he took over that role today. So Summer solstice, woohoo, we saw some sundews, some of those rare orchids, some Helix pomatia. There weren't too many because it's kind of dry today, but we'll probably go back sometime eventually. So that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below. Summer is coming. July and August, those Sarracenia pictures should be popping pretty soon. And we'll be back with that. We'll be back with the bonsai tree. Also, I'm going to be taking a vacation to Poland, so there will be a lot of Helix pomatia, Sapieni moralis, Arianta arbostorum, and who knows what else in the different regions that I travel to. So hit that subscribe button down below. You'll be notified when I make a new video. Until then, I'll see you next time.